Hello, this is Ollie, and welcome to my channel and my very first What If. Now, Dragon Ball has a very huge and vibrant What If community, and while Sonic's isn't quite as big, there are still some amazing creators that have explored some really good alternate scenarios and timelines. All the surface level similarities and connections between Sonic and Dragon Ball have been done to death, but I've always been surprised at how few crossovers there are between Sonic and Dragon Ball, especially in the What If space. The only really notable exception I found was Chaos crossover by Damon What If, and that's really good. I've watched all of it and you should too, but this What If is going to be different. So instead of merging the two universes, I'm going to be changing one key detail. What if Sonic was never born and Goku landed on Mobius in his place? Essentially swapping the two and having Goku take Sonic's place as the main character. So without further ado, let's dive into what if Goku landed on Mobius. Now, I'll admit I did lie a little bit in my intro, but not really since they won't be around for very long. In a far-off galaxy stood a planet named Vegeta, and just like in canon, it is inhabited by a warrior race named the Saiyans, unrivaled in power aside from one other, the Black Arms, a hive mind led by Black Doom. Both species filling a similar niche in the galactic ecosystem would almost constantly clash with one another. The two competing over planets, destroying and harvesting them for their resources. Eventually, Black Doom would grow tired of these constant clashes and move to nip this problem in the bud, or well, tail in this case. The Saiyans grow more and more powerful and problematic each year, so waiting for his promised ultimate life form is off the table. So the trajectory of the Black Comet is set towards planet Vegeta. This is where our story picks up with Bardock, looking up in the sky and seeing a red and black comet blazing towards the planet. At the same time, Saiyan ships are landing, King Vegeta having called back all of his forces to defend the homeworld. This would include Prince Vegeta and his squad. Although some of them inwardly think they may lose, they'd all rather die in battle than live as cowards while their world burns. And this fervor would include Bardock as well. A true Saiyan warrior at heart, the coming battle excites him, but for the first time he also feels something else. In his mind, maybe it's Gine rubbing off on him, but part of him actually wants to say something for once before he dies. His first son, Raditz, would never willingly leave, and Gine's power level is too high to escape undetected. That leaves their youngest son, Kakarot, the only one that could actually be sent away. That night, Bardock takes his thoughts and feelings to Gine, and after some hesitation, she agrees. Soon after, Bardock steals a space pod and they head into the outskirts of Saiyan territory and set its course for a small insignificant world, planet Mobius, a planet with low power levels and not very advanced technology. In Bardock and Gine's minds, it's the perfect place for their son to hide, unaware of the fact that they're working with almost decades-old data and Black Doom's vested interest in the planet. The next day, the Black Comet arrives. The Saiyans fight with everything they have, but in the end, just like in canon, the Saiyan race is wiped out, reaping what they sowed into the universe. And unlike Frieza, Black Doom's cleanse is much more thorough, Kakarot actually being the last remaining Saiyan. I understand some people might disagree with the Black Arms being able to do this, but the Black Arms do have a good amount of advantages on their side. Number one being the sheer numbers on their side. Even at their peak, there are only ever a couple thousand Saiyans compared to the massive numbers of the Black Arms. And the vast majority of those Saiyans are low-class warriors. And even though there is a small amount of them, the Saiyans wouldn't be able to use their full power, namely the Uzaru. Even if we assume all the Saiyans have Great Ape fully mastered and are fully conscious when using it, Planet Vegeta probably wouldn't be able to handle 1,000 Great Apes all rampaging at once. On top of that, the Black Arms don't actually have to beat the Saiyans. They just have to stall long enough for the gas from the Black Comet to start affecting the Saiyans and paralyzing them. I think that's enough to justify the Saiyans losing, so let's move back to Kakarot landing on Earth. Instead of landing on Mount Paozu, Kakarot would land on a snowy island in the midst of a blizzard. His pod would immediately pop open and he'd be able to get out before it falls down a cliff, being buried in the snow almost instantly. Kakarot's cries would echo through the storm, his wails attracting alongside the fireball of his re-entry, an old Mobian hedgehog. Uncle Chuck looking on at the boy in complete shock, not just finding a human in the middle of a storm in the middle of the woods on a Mobian island, but a human with a tail wearing strange body armor. Was he some type of unnatural love child between Mobian and human? Some government experiment? The old man quickly shook those thoughts off, though it was a young boy crying for help and he was going to help. But unlike Grandpa Gohan, Uncle Chuck isn't one of the strongest people on the planet. Kakarot instinctively kicking him in the mouth, Chuck immediately crumpling and dropping the boy. The young Saiyan tumbles down the cliff, nearly cracking his head open on a rock before losing consciousness. Panicking, Uncle Chuck would pull himself together, rushing down the hill and bringing the boy to the nearest hospital. Unlike in canon, Toddler Ku needs to hit his head almost immediately to not end up sliming everyone around him. Even fresh out of the pod, he was able to give Grandpa Gohan trouble, so he just needs to hit his head immediately here. Bardock and Gine are rolling in their non-existent graves, but let's continue. Chuck would hurry himself and the unconscious boy to the nearest hospital, both being treated for their injuries. Uncle Chuck would probably feel really guilty for, one, dropping the kid down the cliff, and two, no one being able to ID the kid. Eventually, the hospital staff would come to Chuck looking for a name aside from John Doe, and the old hedgehog would rack his brain for a moment, recalling an old human story that he'd once heard about a feisty monkey boy from another land, and offers the name Son Goku. So that's how Goku would get his name in this What If, and after a couple more days of touch and go, eventually Goku would stabilize and wake up. And Uncle Chuck, being the only person Goku actually knows, would take the kid in and start to raise him. This is where we start to see some actually tangible differences in Goku's character, mostly because Goku isn't being raised in the middle of a mountain. He's being socialized, he's getting an actual education from Uncle Chuck, although Goku probably wouldn't be the most studious either way. So TLDR, Goku probably is not going to be doing any pat-pats. Although it's not completely hunky-dory, Uncle Chuck would almost immediately recognize that Goku is way too strong for anyone, let alone his age. And although Goku does make some loose friends on Christmas Island, he spends most of his time either by himself or with Uncle Chuck for a multitude of reasons, one of those being the fact that he's human with some type of strange mutation that gave him a tail. On top of the fact that Kid Goku is kind of a roughhouse. Goku is still Goku and is going to do Goku things. Even with the head bump, he's still going to have this intrinsic love of battle, even if it's not expressed nearly as violently or sadistically as if he had not gotten the head bump. The only place he really gets to express this is with his uncle. Chuck would try and help Goku express this stuff in positive ways, getting him stuff like karate DVDs, but unlike Gohan, he wouldn't be able to help him with this stuff directly. And honestly, because of this, Goku would probably be, one, a good deal less physically powerful overall, and two, greatly less skilled, ever being able to pick up the RPS fist or the basis of the common sentence style from Grandpa Gohan. But either way, Goku would be mostly content with his life with his uncle, until one day Goku would stay out too late and catch a glimpse of the full moon. His eyes and mind would go blank, filled with nothing but red as his body swelled. Uncle Chuck, hearing a roar and making his way into the woods to find Goku in the middle of transforming. The Great Ape's eyes locking onto the old hedgehog, Uncle Chuck quickly realizing that Goku is not in there. With a mixture of Goku being weaker than he is in canon, and Uncle Chuck also getting in shape because of Goku, he's able to not get immediately flattened, leading the ape in circles and hiding in the snow until the sun began to come up. Goku would start to de-transform, and Uncle Chuck worried for his grandson to come out too early for his trouble, getting lashed by a tree-sized tail. The old man nearly dying on impact, only holding on long enough for Goku to finish de-transforming. Soon after, Goku would wake up finding his uncle slumped against a tree, barely conscious. Uncle Chuck, not wanting to burden the boy with his death, tells Goku that he was injured by a monster that comes out during the full moon and to never go outside during one. Goku would heed this warning and Uncle Chuck would die soon after. Christmas Island would hold a small funeral for the man and Goku would go back to living alone in Uncle Chuck's home, being incredibly self-sufficient for his age and training in his free time, only really coming into town to get help with things he can't do himself, namely clothes. In my mind, Goku would be wearing clothes similar to what he wore during the days of peace before the Cell games. So Goku would spend some years training on Christmas Island until the events of Sonic 1 were ready to take place. This is one of the first divergences in the major difference between Goku and Sonic's character. Sonic actively looks for adventure and was seeking that at South Island, while Goku on Mount Paozu or Christmas Island was pretty content to just sit there as long as he could fish and train. So Goku would need an inciting incident to get our story rolling. He'd start the day like any other, but something would feel off, feeling of being watched and things out of place constantly nagging at him. He would search around his home until he eventually found himself in Uncle Chuck's study. In the back of the room, hidden in the vault, would be a glittering light blue gem, a memento Uncle Chuck left for Goku. The young boy's fears at least temporarily dismissed, he would leave. And after a moment, with the flutter of wings, a curvaceous figure would land from the ceiling after the boy left, chuckling to herself about the near completion of her heist, nearly as easy as stealing candy from a baby. She would be almost completely transfixed by the blue gem, now hers to keep. Regaining her bearings far too late, as Goku would re-enter the room, remembering he had left the light on and being extremely confused to find this random woman in his home. First, she would try to fluster the boy into giving her an opportunity to escape with her gem. Goku would either be too dense to realize what was going on, or even if she was being less than subtle, would not care and insist that she leave. The woman would eventually drop the act, revealing herself as Rouge the Bat, a world-renowned thief, and would pretty plainly tell Goku to go kick rocks if he knows what's good for him. At the fighting words, Goku would only smile, instincts for battle flaring up as he would slide into a stance. Rouge would roll her eyes in annoyance at the boy before both would lunge at the emerald, getting into a fight. Rouge would pretty quickly realize that this kid is not normal, and even with her reach advantage and the fact that Goku is holding an emerald in one hand, Goku is still able to fight her off incredibly well, and on top of that set up strange attacks and shots using his tail, which she is just realizing this supposedly normal kid has a tail. Quickly realizing that she isn't going to get her prize conventionally, Rouge would fly up to the ceiling. Default approach clearly wasn't working, so she decided to switch things up, just simply asking the boy if he knows what he's holding. Goku would respond that it was a memento from his late uncle, which would float down, simply explaining that it was a Chaos Emerald, one of a set of 7 mystical gems that can grant miracles when brought together. But before she could mix in a sob story about why she would need the emeralds, Goku would simply ask to come with on her adventure. Reluctant at first, Rouge would agree, free muscle being free muscle, although she would make a joke about not being able to carry Goku the whole way there to South Island. He would shake his head and wait for Rouge to follow, bringing her to Uncle Chuck's garage where a red biplane stood. But that is where our first part ends. Questions, feedback, hate is all welcome in the comments. Thank you so much for watching and have a nice day.